Hey guys, this is Justin at the Survival Review, and today we're going to be talking about The Amazing Spider-Man 2, the second movie in the extremely underwhelming Spider-Man reboot franchise. Now, Sam and I both saw this movie Thursday night, so we're going to do what we normally do. I'm doing this spoiler-free review, and then me and him are going to get together and talk about the movie, spoilers and all. So before we get started, my opinion on the first Amazing Spider-Man, I didn't care for it. I had a lot of problems on like the tone of the movie and just a lot of problems I don't feel like delving into right now. So I went into this one with no expectations. I wasn't expecting it to be bad, but I wasn't expecting it to be really good either. And yeah, it wasn't really good. I'm sorry to say. Because I had a little glimmer of hope that maybe this would be good because the trailers were starting to it made it look better than the first. And is it better than the first? I can't really say since I haven't seen the first one in forever. I feel like they're both equally flawed for like different reasons. Like in this one, the tone is better, but there's still a lot of flaws. So before we get on to the flaws, I'm going to talk about the positive things about this movie because there are positive things. I love the cast. Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man, I think, is very good. He's when he is Spider-Man, like in the suit and everything, I think he's the best on-screen version of Spider-Man. He's really fun and energetic, and I think it's really great. It really fits the character. Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy is good. Her character is extremely bland, though. So that's the one problem is a lot of the characters aren't really good, but I like the actors involved. I like Jamie Foxx. But his character, I didn't care for his character. The best actor actually in the movie, I don't know his name, but he played Harry Osborn, and he was awesome. I actually thought he was very good. He stole the scenes he was in. There's a great scene where he's trying to convince Electro to help him, and he's like giving this very intense performance, and I really like that. So I thought he gave the best performance. The costume is awesome. The Spider-Man costume is probably the best on-screen Spider-Man costume we ever had. It's like right off the comics. It's so cool. It's like one of those things you'd see somebody wear a Comic Con. Like it's perfectly from the comics, and every time that costume was on screen, it just looked awesome. The action scenes were great. They were really thrilling. The use of slow motion was actually pretty cool. It worked like in showing off his powers and how like fast he can move and stuff like that, and I really like that. Although the actions will kind of go into I'll just segue into my flaws right now, I guess. The trailers showed too much. So the action scenes were never surprising. Because every big action moment was in the trailers. And that was a bigger problem. Like, those action scenes would have been amazing, seeing them for the first time on the big screen. Just like, whoa, look at that. But now it's like, yeah, I saw that, that's cool. It's cooler in theaters, but yeah. So that was a little annoying. The trailers showed too much. If you haven't seen many of the trailers, that's good. That's good. I mean, I didn't watch too much of the marketing stuff for this movie. I only watched like a couple of trailers. But even in those like few trailers, it gave away a lot. And then the storyline. This movie is all over the place. There's a ton of different subplots being thrown around and nothing really flows. Like I was never really invested during this movie because it just kept cutting to different subplots. There's Peter Parker trying to get back with Gwen Stacy. There's Peter Parker trying to find out about his family, his parents, what really happened. You know, that subplot from the first movie that they just forgot after a little while. They're still doing that. Then you have Harry Osborn who's trying to save his life, trying to get Spider-Man's blood, and then there's Electro who's doing his thing, and it's just like, just too much, and nothing was really interesting. Actually, there was one subplot that was actually the most interesting thing in the movie, and that was the Harry Osborn stuff. Again, I thought that was the most engaging stuff in the movie. Near the end of it, it got a little rushed. Near the end of the Harry Osborn stuff, but I thought that was the most interesting part, and that was the only time I was really engaged in the movie. And surprisingly, the least interesting stuff was the stuff with Peter Parker. I don't know. Every time that he was on, I didn't care what was going on. It was just the story. Like I said, I like the actor, so it was basically the storyline. And a lot of people were worried that this movie was going to be too complicated because there's 3 villains. And, you know, last time they made a Spider-Man movie with 3 villains, we got Spider-Man 3. You know, all know how that turned out. And that's not the problem. That's the funny thing. The villains is really not the problem. It's Rhino is barely in the movie. He's actually very unnecessary. Just a build up to the next movie. You see him in the beginning as just like the regular guy played by Paul Giamatti, and then you see him at the end in the final scene in the Rhino suit, and it's just a tease for future movies. And Green Goblin only appears near the end in an action scene. The main villains throughout the movie is Electro and Harry Osborn, pretty much. So that wasn't the problem, it's just everything else made it too complicated. That's what I found kind of funny, that no, the villains isn't why it's too complicated, it's just everything else. So they finally reveal like what happened to Peter Parker's parents and why they disappeared. And it was the most underwhelming, generic, cliched thing. Just basically they had to get a mild spoiler, not really. They had to get away because Oscorp is bad. That's the gist of it. And it's like, oh, didn't know that going into this movie. And I was like, that was so underwhelming. And there's one moment I'd say I hated. One moment, and it's kind of a spoilers moment. I'm not going to really give it all away. But when Peter Parker finds out his stuff about his parents, he watches this video that his like dad filmed on like a webcam or whatever. And basically, without saying exactly what he's talking about, he explains something to do with, if you've seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about, to do with the spiders, the spider that bit Peter, that was an Oscorp that he was testing on, that pretty much makes it like the biggest thing in the world, that Peter Parker's the only person who could have become Spider-Man. And I hate it when they try too hard to connect things. It just feels forced, and this felt extremely forced, where it's just like, yeah, if anybody else got bit by that spider, it would have killed him, but since it was Peter Parker, since the whole connection with his dad, he did it. He became Spider-Man. I didn't like that at all. I hate it. It always feels forced when movies try to explain everything, make it like it's all connected. And it's like, no. It makes it even more weird and stupid if it is. So that was one part I really didn't like. I didn't like that at all. The major problem with this movie is that it doesn't have one central story to keep everything going. For example, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, which is a movie I still love to this day, and is a much superior film to this. There's a decent amount going on in that movie. You have Spider-Man losing his powers, Spider-Man being very stressed out and all this stuff going on, him trying to get back with Mary Jane, and then you have like Mary Jane marrying Jameson's son, and then you have Doc Ock with all his problems. But the central story is Spider-Man losing his powers because of all the stress and stuff he's going to. That's the central story that's connecting everything together. The central story in Amazing Spider-Man 2, I don't know what it is. There's just too much going on for it to really work, and to have one, there's no central story. There's just too many plot points just kind of being thrown at you. The tone, like I was saying earlier, I know a lot of people were talking about the tone. I didn't mind it. I thought the tone was actually pretty consistent. There were some moments where it was a little too goofy, and I was like, no. But for the most part, I thought the tone was pretty consistent. It never was extremely dark and then had a goofy scene right after. So I didn't have a problem with that. I know some people did. It was much better than the first movie, where that tone was just dark and gritty. And this is not that. This is much more fun type of vibe to it, and I like that. I like that a lot going in. Paul Giamatti as Rhino was awful. He was hamming it up so much, and it was just it was cringeworthy to watch. I didn't like it. I was like, no. Oh, no. And I feel really bad because Paul Giamatti is a good actor, and we got that. So, overall, even though I've spent most of this time bashing the movie, it's not awful. It's not that bad. It's just not really good, if that makes any sense. I don't want to bash this movie too much because there's good things going into it. Like I said, great action scenes, great acting, but there's a lot of flaws that just bring it down. Out of 10, I'd have to give it a pretty positive for what I've been saying, but a 6 out of 10. So that's Amazing Spider-Man 2, a movie that wasn't very good, and I wasn't disappointed because I didn't expect anything out of it. But overall, it was a very mediocre effort from a new franchise that started out mediocre. So it's just, I want to like it. I mean, I like Spider-Man. I'm not the biggest Spider-Man fan. I really enjoyed the first 2 Sam Raimi films. I love Spider-Man 2 to this day. Can't believe that was 10 years ago. that's just weird. But overall, a really mixed bag with an unfocused plot that's just all over the place. Basically, that's it. Me and Sam will have our spoiler video hopefully coming out soon. And until then, I'll talk to you guys later.